this certification often creates a strange mix of relief and uncertainty, because the question immediately becomes what comes next, rather than whether you are finished. The answer is not a single credential or job title, but a set of pathways that depend on the kind of responsibility you want to take on and the scope at which you want to operate. This certification establishes you as someone who understands security as a system of governance, risk, and controls, rather than as a collection of isolated tools. What follows should build depth or breadth in a direction that matches how you want to influence decisions and outcomes. Thinking clearly about that direction early helps you avoid collecting credentials that look impressive but do not meaningfully change your professional trajectory. Leadership-oriented paths tend to appeal to those who want to shape security outcomes through authority, coordination, and strategic decision-making, rather than through direct technical execution. These roles often emphasize governance, program design, policy ownership, and communication with executives and boards. Success here depends on the ability to translate technical risk into business impact and to align security initiatives with organizational objectives. People on this path often find themselves responsible for prioritization, funding justification, and accountability rather than for configuring systems directly. The certification you now hold provides credibility in these conversations, but advancement comes from demonstrating that you can lead programs that produce measurable, durable results. Architecture-focused paths are well suited to professionals who want to influence security through design decisions that shape how systems are built and interconnected. This direction deepens your ability to reason about trade-offs across networks, platforms, cloud environments, and identity models before problems appear in production. Architects are expected to understand how controls interact across layers and how design choices affect resilience, scalability, and risk over time. The work is less about reacting to incidents and more about preventing classes of failure through thoughtful structure. Advancing here means demonstrating that your designs hold up under real-world pressure and can be explained clearly to both technical and non-technical stakeholders. Operations-centered paths attract those who prefer leading the defense in real time, where detection, response, and recovery capabilities are constantly tested. These roles often involve oversight of incident response, monitoring programs, threat detection, and operational resilience. The challenge is not just technical skill, but the ability to make decisions under uncertainty, coordinate across teams, and restore stability quickly when systems are stressed. Leadership in operations requires trust because teams look to you when stakes are high and information is incomplete. Growth in this area comes from building mature processes, reducing time to detection and response, and demonstrating calm, effective leadership during difficult events. Risk-focused paths emphasize enterprise risk management, assurance activities, and the ability to evaluate security posture in a structured, defensible way. These roles often intersect with audit, compliance, and regulatory functions, requiring strong documentation, communication, and judgment. The work centers on identifying risk, evaluating controls, and helping the organization decide which risks to mitigate, transfer, or accept. This path rewards professionals who can balance technical understanding with analytical rigor, and who are comfortable working with senior stakeholders on formal risk decisions. Progress here is measured by improved visibility, clearer accountability, and risk decisions that stand up to scrutiny over time. Privacy-oriented paths have grown in importance as organizations grapple with expanding data protection obligations and rising public expectations. These roles focus on how personal data is collected, used, shared, and retained, and how those practices align with legal and ethical standards. Success requires understanding both technical safeguards and governance mechanisms, such as consent management, data minimization, and cross-border transfer controls. Privacy leadership often involves working closely with legal, product, and marketing teams to embed protection into business processes rather than bolting it on later.
Advancement comes from demonstrating that privacy programs can support business goals while reducing regulatory and reputational risk.
Specialization choices often align with industry context because different sectors emphasize different risk profiles and control priorities. Financial environments tend to focus heavily on fraud prevention, availability, and regulatory scrutiny, while healthcare environments emphasize data protection, safety, and operational continuity. Government and defense environments introduce considerations around classification, mission assurance, and formal accreditation processes. Choosing an industry focus allows you to develop deeper contextual expertise that makes your judgment more valuable and your advice more credible. Over time, industry specialization can differentiate you more strongly than additional general certifications alone.
Continuing education remains essential because the certification you hold represents a baseline of knowledge at a point in time, not a permanent state of mastery. Controls evolve, threats adapt, and regulatory expectations shift, which means relevance depends on staying engaged with change. Continuing education should not be treated as a compliance exercise, but as an opportunity to deepen understanding in areas that support your chosen path. This might involve formal coursework, professional reading, or participation in communities of practice. The goal is to remain fluent in current thinking while retaining the foundational principles that do not change.
Building a strong professional portfolio often matters more than accumulating additional credentials once you reach this level. A portfolio emphasizes outcomes delivered, such as programs built, incidents managed, risks reduced, or architectures improved. These tangible results demonstrate capability in a way that exam scores and acronyms cannot. When you can explain what you owned, what decisions you made, and what changed as a result, your experience becomes legible to others. Over time, this narrative of impact becomes the primary driver of advancement, with certifications serving as supporting evidence rather than the centerpiece.
Mentoring and teaching play an underrated role in long-term growth because explaining concepts to others forces clarity and reveals gaps in understanding. When you mentor junior professionals or teach peers, you reinforce your own mastery through articulation and repetition. This process also builds leadership credibility because people remember who helped them understand difficult material or navigate challenging situations. Teaching does not require a formal classroom. It can happen through reviews, guidance, and structured knowledge sharing. Many senior professionals find that their influence expands significantly once they invest in developing others deliberately. Professional networks become increasingly important as roles grow in scope and seniority. Opportunities at higher levels are often driven by reputation, trust, and shared experience rather than by open postings alone. Networks formed through collaboration, conferences, and professional communities expose you to different perspectives and create pathways to roles you might not otherwise see. These relationships are most valuable when they are built on shared practice rather than transactional self-promotion. Over time, a strong network amplifies your impact by connecting you to problems where your skills are needed.
Role transitions are smoother when you explicitly map your existing skills to the responsibilities of the role you want next. Rather than focusing on titles, focus on what decisions the role owns, what outcomes it is accountable for, and what evidence demonstrates success. This mapping helps you identify gaps you need to close and strengths you can highlight. It also allows you to tell a coherent story about why you are ready for a broader or different scope. Thoughtful transitions reduce the risk of stepping into a role unprepared or underselling your readiness. Long-term growth in security often comes from leading cross-functional initiatives that cut across organizational boundaries. These initiatives force you to integrate governance, technology, operations, and communication in a way that isolated roles do not. They also provide visible evidence of leadership
because success depends on influence rather than authority alone.
Examples include enterprise identity programs, cloud security transformations, or incident response maturity efforts. Leading such work demonstrates that you can operate at scale and handle complexity, which is a key signal for senior advancement.
Ultimately, what comes after this certification is determined less by the letters you add to your name and more by the responsibilities you choose to own. Each pathway, whether leadership, architecture, operations, risk, or privacy, demands different strengths and rewards different kinds of success. The certification gives you a broad foundation and shared language, but it does not dictate your destination. Your next step should align with where you want to make decisions, how broadly you want to influence outcomes, and what kind of problems you want to solve. When you let responsibility guide your choices rather than prestige alone, your career path becomes clearer and more sustainable over time. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.